Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's pre-show of our 220-1201. That is our Core 1 A+ study group. I am just getting things ready here, making sure that all of my cameras are working. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody is doing well. Good to see you. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here right now because we haven't had a live stream all month. We're halfway through November, more than halfway. And we haven't even had any live streams this month because of, well, the chaos that is my world. Was out of town, coming back. There's a lot of moving parts, but I'm so glad we were able to get in and do these live streams. We have one today. We have our Core 2 study group Wednesday. We have our Network Plus study group Friday. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We've got 3 live streams this week, if I can make it. Hello, everyone. Hey, Mal, good to see you. Nice to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us again. So good to see you. And other folks in the chat room. There's folks checking in from Texas and elsewhere. Malk is in the middle of the Caribbean. Technically, is that still the Caribbean way out there? I guess it sort of is. We sort of lump all those things out there. And we made it through hurricane season at this point? I think we might have. I think it might be over for all of us, thankfully, to make that happen. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. It is so great. You always wonder, you go away for a few weeks and you wonder, is anybody going to show up on the live stream? Thankfully, you're here. So that concern is no longer there. We got lots to do today. Oh, you want to put there, we need that right there. That link on your screen in the lower third, professormesser.com/QA, is how you can participate today. In fact, I have a question up right now. There it is. Where are you joining from? Where are you in the world? I see you there, Malk. I see you way down here. You're right there. There he is. Out there. Wonder why that's red. Wonder why this is. And we got folks checking in from all over. Got folks over in all over the world, all there. So thank you so much for being here, everybody. We have a lot to go through today. I have all new questions, of course, in the live stream. And if you have a question for the after show, which means you get to ask a question of me, you can do that by going to that same link that's on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. There's a tab at the top, and you can submit questions for the second hour anytime you'd like. I'll be going through those later. Folks are checking in from all over, from Hungary, from San Antonio, Texas, right there on the Riverwalk. We got folks in Miami Beach out there on Collins. We got Tampa, Florida is here. A lot of Floridians checking in. Thank you for being here, fellow Floridians. Of course, the studio is in Central Florida in the Orlando area. So it's we're right in the middle, and then everybody else sort of joining us there. Tennessee, Australia. We got folks from Nigeria, Austin, Montana checking in. I was just there. I was just in Livingston. You just missed me. We should have said hi. Jacksonville, more Jacksonville's here. North Bama. I think I did it right. It's hard to tell. I spent a lot of time in Alabama, but really more in the southern part of Alabama. It's very, very abbreviated. Alabama. It's there's a little thing there. Memphis is here. Nolans. We got more Alabama. Gulf Shores. There's my folks. I'm originally from North Florida. So I'm in that area where I think I was just below the Georgia line by about 25 miles. Alabama's a little bit farther over, but not much. We used to go up to Alabama all the time. We got kinfolk over in Mariana. And so occasionally we drive on up to Bama. I am from the Panhandle. That's where that comes from. How y'all doing? Yeah, I don't get to talk much like that anymore. I don't get to, hey, everybody, how y'all doing? I do say y'all every once in a while, and it does strike fear into my friends in California. They're not sure what to think. Like, what are you talking about? That's how we used to do it up there. But that's sort of how things normally will work here. Florida's a big place. So that's how it works. So we got a lot to go through today. As I mentioned, although I was out of town, I did spend some time working on our live stream today. There's a 5-minute warning. Boy, that happened fast. We'll make all that happen. I have to do all of those things. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. We've got much more to go through in a moment. I'm checking last minute things. We got cameras are working. Presentations are ready to go. Live stream is working. Here's our live stream stats. As many of you know, we put out about 6 megabits per second of a 1080p signal to YouTube. They reconstitute it, they re-render it, and send it to you in whatever format they do. So you're seeing it about 7 to 10 seconds after I say it, which is pretty good, really. The cache at 3% is perfectly normal. That's where we like to see it. So there's a little bit of buffering going on here. 3 and 4% is perfectly normal. If it goes above that, then that means we usually have a problem. So I like it when it's low. I like it when it's a small number. Single digits. Works great to have that there. Oh, we got a lot of things I need to... Whenever you don't do a live stream for more than a week, occasionally I'll have a week off. This time I had like 3 weeks off. And you forget where all the buttons are because there's a lot of buttons. I'm not sure if you can see all of that. I've simplified it quite a bit in the previous years. It is much simpler than it used to be. I got one potentiometer on one microphone. Done. Audio is good. We've got everything else that's red, all muted, so don't have that. We've got a very simplified video switcher that I can move back and forth just by pushing a couple buttons. So I'm glad I simplified things. I'm glad I made it a little bit easier because when you step into it after 3 weeks, you're almost in a completely different environment. So I have to get back into the scheme of things, the mode, the operation of things. And you will probably see me click the wrong buttons a few times on this live stream. But that's the beauty of a live event, right? We get to do all of that. Oh, we got a lot to go through. I was working hard because I was traveling a lot in the last couple of weeks. And whenever we do that, I was really working on getting all of this content written. So I wrote a lot of this content while on the road. And now we're sort of here making this happen. I need the stream content there. Excellent. That's what we want. That's what YouTube said. YouTube said that I was excellent. There it is. My stream status. It's excellent. It's shiny. It's good. All works perfect along those lines. So that's where we would like to keep it. So do whatever you need to do on your side to stay excellent. We should all stay excellent today. This is turning into a movie now. We've got 2 minutes to go. I'm going to do one last check. Things are looking pretty good there. Stream is fine. We are recording. Can't really see the Cylons very well down here, but they are down here and they are spinning. So that part's good. No super chats now. I did turn that functionality off. Although I appreciate the idea and the thoughts that you have behind the super chat, it seemed to get in the way of what we were doing. I felt bad when I wasn't able to thank people when we were in the middle of things. And by the time I get back to it, it's scrolled off and I feel like it wasn't supporting you the proper way. And you just being here is fantastic. That's all we need. So we don't necessarily need a super chat. In the meantime, this will work fine. But if you're interested in supporting us, we have course notes, we have practice exams, we have other things on our site as well, and those are working great. So I would rather simplify and streamline things for all of you watching, and I think it's worked out okay. So I apologize that the super chat isn't there anymore. I think I got rid of it about a year ago, about 6 months ago, a year ago, somewhere in there, something like that. So we'll see if that works out. We got less than a minute to go. I should probably make sure that I am ready to go. One last sip. I think we're in pretty good shape. These will be good today. It is a bit of a spaceship at times. It is a little bit, now when normally all of this is not on, this is not on. Usually it's just these two screens. This laptop is closed up. Live streams are very different. And it is a remarkable set of monitors here, but it works out perfect. It works out just fine. And I like it a lot. Okay. I think with that, it's the top of the hour. Let's see if we can get Keynote working. Keynote's right there. That's what it says. We got a green light, green light, green light. We push the button, green light. There we go. Yes, it's all a monitor issue, isn't it? Let's do a live stream, everybody. We'll get me going there. We'll get you going here. And let's do this. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2025 Professor Messer A+ Core 1 study group. This is the study group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and we get to see just how well you might know some of this information. We have a lot to go through today. We've got plenty of new questions for you. We have lots of things in our after show, and you're more than welcome to leave me a question for the after show at any time during this first hour by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, which is not only the link that you will use to submit questions for that after show, that is also the link that you will use to answer the questions that we have today. In fact, we're going to jump right into it and start asking some of these questions that we have today. The question that I would like to present to you is one from last month. So you might remember this one, or do you remember this one? We're going to find out in a moment, because here's the question that we like to call our rewind question, to see if you're able to get in and answer the questions that we have in our study group. So here is our question, our rewind question of the month. And it is: a user has authenticated to a wireless network using their normal Microsoft domain credentials. Which of the following port numbers was most likely involved in this process? Is that port number, I think I'm in the, get myself out of the way here. Remember I told you in the pre-show that I will be clicking the wrong buttons often? Well, we've already started. If you think you know the answer, it's probably one of these. Again, you will want to answer by following the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. If you are authenticating to a wireless network using the normal Microsoft domain credentials, are you using port 67, 22, 389, 143, or 3389? Quite a few port numbers to go through. If you think you know the answer, do not answer in the chat room. Use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Where's that link? Is it over here? No, it's over here. Go to that link right over there. professormesser.com/QA. It's all reversed on my side. It's the way it normally works. We will come back to this question in just a moment. I have a couple of things to talk to you, and we will get back to that question right away. In fact, if you are here, thank you so much for being here live. If you're watching on the replay, thanks for joining us on the replay as well. Either way, you are set to learn something today about that A+ Core 1 study group. And remember that we are always available on our social media sites and our live Discord, which is available 24/7. You can find us by typing in professormesser.com/ the name of the site you would like to find us on, /YouTube, /X, /Instagram, /Discord, /LinkedIn, /Facebook. You get the idea. Just type in professormesser.com/ the name of the place where you would like us to be, and we will have all of those available for you to see. Now, of course, sometime during this first hour, I will give you instructions on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU just for watching this, just for being here, just for hanging out with us and having fun. Listen in sometime during that first hour. I will give you that code, and I will give you instructions on how you can earn that CEU if you're someone who is working on accumulating all of those CEUs for your renewal. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then it probably doesn't apply to you. That's kind of nice to have that there. We've got a lot of things that have changed with the A+ recently. As many of you recall, in September, the older version of the A+ exam was retired, at least the English language version of it. We'll talk about that in a moment. The current versions of the English language A+ exams are the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. CompTIA has also given this a version number. This is the first time they've done this. The version number is V15. I don't know if that makes any difference to what you are doing. As long as all of your study materials say the 220-1201 and 220-1202, you're in good shape. This is an exam, this series of exams that have been out since March. So we've had kind of an overlap period until now, but now the previous version has been retired. This is the only English language version that you're able to take. So if you are planning to book your exams, those will be the 2 exam versions that you would need to take. They will probably be retiring in about 3.5 years. That means they will retire somewhere around September 2028. 3.5 years from their release date, that is. So about 3 years from where we are right now. Got a lot to go through. There is 90 minutes on each of these exams, and you are graded on a scale from 100 to 900. It's kind of weird. It's not something you normally see. You also need to score at least a 675 to pass your 1201 exam, and you need a 700 to pass your 1202 exam. So you have to do a little bit better on that second exam to earn your A+ certification. And once you are certified, your certification is good for 3 years. You would need to renew it to continue being A+ certified after that point. There are a lot of different ways to renew. And if you look in the YouTube video description of this video, I have a video that describes, yet another video that describes the process of renewal and some of the options that are available to you. You might want to look at that. Somewhere in our study group today, we will be going through quite a bit of information, but one of the things you'll notice is that a day after we're done, there will be a lot of timestamps that have been added to the YouTube video description. We're able to do that thanks to the hard work of my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. Everybody say thanks to Lori and give her a hello. She is the one going through this probably at 2x speed after the fact and putting in all of these specific timestamps for you. That's how you get such accurate and precise timestamps, is you have a human do it. And that's really, as far as we have found, the very best way to ensure a perfect exam and live stream overview for all of these. So thank you, Lori, for that. And we look forward to seeing the timestamps. If you're watching this a day later, they're probably already in your YouTube video description, and you can find exactly what you are looking for very, very quickly. Also let you know that as we step through this, there are people that are in our Discord. I mentioned this earlier. When we're not doing a live stream, we're over on our Discord. There are thousands of people there that are studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security+, and other certifications. A great way to network with other people in our industry, and it's a nice place to hang out. If you have questions for me or others, people always seem to be there, and there's always somebody who's willing to help. It's a great group of people. We have a very nice community there, and you can join us at professormesser.com/discord. Also let you know that sometime eventually you will need to take your exam. And if you're in the US or Canada, I already have discounted vouchers for you. Now, you could go out to the CompTIA website and pay full price, but why would you do that when exactly the same vouchers are available at professormesser.com/vouchers? Not only do you get your voucher at a discount, I'll even give you something you can't get anywhere else, and that's a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This Exam Hacks ebook is something I wrote that took all of the tips and tricks that I've accumulated through the years, not only for studying for your exam, but tips you can use during the exam itself that could potentially get you a few extra points. And who doesn't want a few extra points on their exam? Sometimes strategy is just as important as your knowledge. Let's combine both of those. I put everything into this Exam Hacks ebook, and you get the Exam Hacks ebook for free when you purchase a voucher. We don't sell this separately. You only get it with a voucher, or if you get our success bundles. Those are also, the Exam Hacks is also included with our success bundles. That's the only way to get your hands on those. So you might want to check that out. If you want to learn more, you'll find it at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question I asked you earlier. A user has authenticated to a wireless network using their normal Microsoft domain credentials. Which of the following port numbers was most likely involved in this process? Was it 67, 22, 389, 143, or 3389? We will close our poll and see how you did with this one. We did a little bit better this time than we did last month, didn't we? If you recall from last month, we almost had an even distribution of 20% all the way around, it seemed. But this time, we got pretty close to 50%. 389, that port number got 45% of the vote. But we still got double digits. 3389 got 20% of the vote. We had 13% of the vote at 143 and 16% at 67. Only 6% said 22. I think a lot of people remember the SSH port of being 22, and they know, well, SSH is not used for authentication, so we would not use that either. So the real question becomes then, what is the right answer of all of those? If we go with the plurality of you, almost the majority of you at 45%, and we show that correct answer. Indeed, that's exactly what it was. Port 389 is what we wanted to know, and 389, of course, is LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. LDAP is an authentication protocol, so if you are logging into something, you're logging into a domain controller, you're logging into a VPN concentrator, you're logging into even a switch or a router, they can be configured to authenticate you using a centralized database. That's why you can type your same username and password anywhere at work, and it always works because there is a centralized database to make that happen. So LDAP is a great use of that. And if you are doing LDAP radius, you've got a lot of different types of protocols like TACACS. There are many different ways to authenticate to a network, but only one of our answers had anything to do with authentication. You've got 389. That was the one that was specific to authentication. All of the other protocols are for different purposes. 67 would be for DHCP. As we already mentioned, 22 is for SSH. 143, got some IMAP email that's happening. And 3389, although it's close to 389, it's got that extra 3 in the front. That is for remote desktop. So that's one of those examples where it's really important to pay attention to what the question is asking about. Notice the question didn't ask about LDAP. It didn't ask about the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. This is very common on the exam. They very commonly do not give you a direct question. They will not ask you, for example, very unusual to see on an exam, what port number is used by LDAP? You probably won't get that. You'll probably get a question like this that describes the process of LDAP. You have to put it all together. And once you fit all of those things together, you have an answer of 389 for LDAP. We did so much better this month than we did last. So that's great to see. We did fantastic on our rewind question of the month. So now it's time to take this up to the next level. Let's do some new questions. And of course, as many of you know that have been on our live streams before, our first new question of the month is a performance-based question. This is very similar to taking the exam for real. When you sit down and take the exam, the first handful of questions on your exam will not be multiple choice questions. They will be anything but multiple choice. What Microsoft or what CompTIA calls this, we're talking about these questions, they call them performance-based questions because they could be any type of question. They could be a fill in the blank. They could be a matching question. They could be a drag and drop question. They could put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. Maybe you're put in a Windows environment. You have to do something inside of Windows. The important thing to remember, though, is that the performance-based questions are also based on the same exam objectives that you've already been studying. So really, this is just another way to ask information that you already know. So you don't have to worry so much about how they're asking the question because you already know the answer. So I have for you some questions that we will talk about today. And these questions are all based on this image. So we have this output that's on the screen. This is an output from my Windows machine. And I have a number of questions that I would like you to answer by visiting the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. As I mentioned earlier, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Our performance-based question of the month asks, use this output to answer the following questions. And I have 3 questions here for you. What command would confirm connectivity to the router on the local subnet? So you'll have to look at this output from my Windows machine to be able to answer that. What would you do at the command prompt to answer that particular challenge there? The second question is, what command would show the network path between this device and the secondary DNS server? Which command would you use for that? This is a command line option at Windows. We're on a Windows configuration. So what Windows command would provide that information? And thirdly, how was this computer's IP address configured? And the more information you can provide, the better. So this is a really good example. And I like this question because on the exam, you could be presented with the output of any one of these numerous commands that you need to know. And instead of asking you what command was used for this, which I did not ask you either, instead I asked you about what you were seeing in the output. which indeed is almost, if not more important than knowing what to type in to get this information to begin with. It's good if you know how to present this information. For those of you wondering, this is the ipconfig/all command in Windows. So knowing how to do that is useful. But once you get the output, how do you read it? What's in here? This is a page of a lot of information. So how would I interpret this information on my screen? So it's important that you not only know how to perform the commands, it's also important that you know how to interpret the results of those commands. So that's another one that we definitely need to know about. This is a networking question. You get a lot of networking things that are coming through on your Core 1 exam. So we definitely wanted to take you through what some of these might be. So this is absolutely a Core 1 question. There's a whole section on Core 1 about networking. So we're going to talk about networking today and what those different commands happen to be. Now, the commands themselves are also in Core 2. You will see those in our Core 2 study group in 2 days. As I mentioned earlier, these are important commands to think about as well. These will be very useful for you as you get into troubleshooting and working through all the challenges you have with understanding what's happening across the wire or across the wireless network. This is something that's really a challenge. If you think you know the answer, you can put that answer in by using the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. And of course, remember what you put in there. Once you submit your answer, it doesn't show that to you anymore, or didn't used to. I don't think it still does. So we're going to find out what these happen to be. I like these questions that lead you down a path of understanding how to interpret the output from these. And you should absolutely be familiar with the output from all of these. So let's step through them one at a time, and let's see what we would have put in. Some of these I think we could have done in a number of different ways, and you could choose one or two different commands. Either one is right in my world, and we'll step through each one of these and figure out the details. Let's start with the very first question on the screen, which is, of all of the information here, what command would confirm connectivity to the router on the local subnet? So one of the first things we need to know is, where's the router on the local subnet? We can see that if we look at IP addresses, the IPv4 address associated with this device is 192.168.1.98. That is the IP address that was assigned to us. We also have, if you look, a default gateway. The default gateway is 192.168.1.99. And the default gateway, as many of you are already aware, is your router on the local subnet. It's another way to describe what's your router in the local subnet. That's your default gateway. What's a default gateway? It's a router that's on your local subnet, specifically the router that you use to leave the local subnet and communicate outside of this local subnet. So now that we know what the router is in the local subnet, which is 192.168.1.99, we can confirm the router on the local subnet and make sure that it's alive by pinging it. We'll perform a ping command, and we have to perform the entire command of the router on the local subnet. We will ping 192.168.1.99 and get a result of that. So that's how we know that that router is at least responding to us on that local network. So now we know exactly how we can confirm connectivity to that. The ipconfig command that we show here does not confirm connectivity. It just tells us what we are configured to connect to. If this default gateway was down, then 192.168.1.99 would not respond to us. So indeed, having that ping command confirms that that router is at least on the network and communicating us. Doesn't say that the router is routing, but it does say that that device is alive, it's on the network, and we're just a little bit farther down the line with our troubleshooting and the things that we're doing. So now let's look at the second question that we had, which is, what command would show the network path between this device and the secondary DNS server? Well, our secondary DNS server, we should probably now find the secondary DNS server. You can see way down here are DNS servers, and there are two configured on the system. The two IP addresses configured for DNS are 192.168.1.155. That's a local DNS server that I have on my network. And then there's this other DNS server. This is a real IP address, 1.0.0.1. So as many of you probably already know, Cloudflare also has a DNS service of 1.1.1.1. This is their secondary IPv4 DNS IP address 1.0.0.1. So how would we show the network path between my device at 192.168.1.98 and the DNS server at 1.0.0.1? How do we get there? Well, as it turns out, we'll go to this page that shows a traceRT, the traceroute command in Windows. As many of you know, with Windows, we're limited to 8 characters. Technically not limited any longer, but from a legacy perspective, we are limited to that. So traceroute of 1.0.0.1, because that is our secondary server. And then it shows us on this network, how do you get there? I have taken some of this information and hidden it from view, just so that you're not creating problems for me and the rest of the world from all of this. You can see there's a lot of local IP addresses on my local ISP. My local ISP does very large scale natting on the inside. That's what that 100 dot address happens to be. And then we've got quite a bit of additional. So we went from a 192 network to a 100 network to a 10 network. There's a lot of natting happen before this even gets out to the rest of the network. And now we've got a lot of breakdowns for all of these. So that gives you an idea of what type of commands are important on your network section. There's a whole network troubleshooting section on the Core 1 exam. This talks to those troubleshooting questions that you will run into. So that's what we would use is the traceroute command. If you were to perform this same traceroute command, and I would recommend that you do, pop open a command line and just type traceRT 1.0.0.1, and you'll get your own traceroute, which obviously will be a little bit different than my traceroute, but that's exactly how you would make that happen. And then lastly, here's another question. And again, this talks to the challenges we have in troubleshooting networks, is sometimes it's important to know how we got to where we are. Before we start doing any other tests, you may want to ask yourself, how was this computer's IP address configured? Was it an IP reservation? Was it something we typed in manually? How did we get this IP address? All of this information, of course, is in this overview that you have on the screen. So we're going to have a look at that list again. How was this IP address configured? We can see a host name. We can see a DNS suffix. We can see other information about the device. We've got all of those IP addresses for IPv4 and IPv6. And you can see there was a lease obtained. So already we know that the IP addresses that we are working with for our IP address, our subnet mask, our default gateways, and most likely our DNS servers as well were obtained through a lease. And in fact, to qualify that just a little bit more, if we look down a little bit further, it says DHCP server. So that's how we got the IP address of this. So if you're wondering, was this manually configured? Was this not manually? Was this automatically obtained from a DHCP server? That's where you would find it. That information will be in your ipconfig/all. And if you see a list for a DHCP server and you see that a lease was obtained and the lease expires, you know this was provided through DHCP. So there's how we got the IP address. It was not manually configured. It was an IP address that was assigned automatically by our local DHCP server, which also happens to exist at the same IP address as the default gateway. That's because I have a single device on my network that is not only my default gateway, has a lot of other services running on it at the same time. This is probably very familiar to you. If you have a wireless router at home, it's almost exactly the same configuration for that. Now, it doesn't have to be. That DHCP server could have been a different device on the network, could have been a different IP address. In fact, if this was a corporate network, you would probably have many DHCP servers so that you had redundancy. So you may not always see that a default gateway is the same IP address as a DHCP server, but if you're at home on a home network, I bet that it will be. It's kind of nice to have everything in one device, isn't it, to make that happen. So now we know it was not an API PA address, an automatic IP address configuration. It was not a manual address. It was indeed DHCP. So those were our 3 questions. We did the command to confirm connectivity to the router on the local subnet was a ping command, and the router on our local subnet was 192.168.1.99. The command that would show the network path, there's the ping command. The command that would show the network path between this device and the secondary DNS server would be traceroute, traceRT. You will also see these on your Core 2 exam. And it's important to be able to see what those commands happen to be. And then lastly, you can see here, how was this IP address configured? It was configured through DHCP, and you can see the DHCP server information is right there. So again, knowing the commands is especially important for the Core 2, but being able to interpret and troubleshoot the network is an important part of the Core 1 command. So there's a slight overlap in those two exam objectives, but it's only slight. The important part is being able to understand these commands that we're typing in and be able to identify and understand where this information is coming from, and more importantly, how to troubleshoot once you have the details. Let's now go to a different set of questions. Now that we've done our performance-based question of the month, let's shift back to multiple choice questions. Let's see how you do with this next one. This one asks, a technician has received an alert that states the drive reconnection count threshold has been exceeded. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this alert? Did this come from Windows Event Viewer, power supply, a USB controller, smart, or a Wi-Fi analyzer? Got a few things to think about there. A technician has received an alert which states the drive reconnection count threshold has been exceeded. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this alert? Is it the Windows Event Viewer, power supply, USB controller, smart, or Wi-Fi analyzer? If you think you know the answer, I put that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. As always, of course, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You should absolutely have a look at professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. I have to see which ones are there. We got a lot to be able to work through on this question. There's a lot of different things happening in this question, so we just need to break it down and then determine what we think the right answer is. We got a lot of answers right away. A lot of you locked in your answer pretty quick. So I'm very curious to see what the answer is. I'm not peeking on my side. I'm not going to look on my side. We're going to figure this out as we go through the details of it. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these errors that you might run into. So absolutely go through and mark what you think the right answer is by going to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did. The question again asks, a technician has received an alert which states the drive reconnection count threshold has been exceeded. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this alert? Is it Windows Event Viewer, power supply, USB controller, smart, or Wi-Fi analyzer? We're going to close the poll, and we can see that 56% of you say the answer is smart. It's wicked smart. And then we got 33% of you that say, nope, it came from Windows Event Viewer, which is possible, but that wasn't the question. 8% of you say the answer is USB controller. 4% say Wi-Fi analyzer. And then you've got 0% that say it came from the power supply. So now let's see if we can break down what we think it is. 56% of you say it is wicked smart, and you can see that you're absolutely correct. 56% of you were absolutely right on that one. Smart would be the most likely source of this alert. What do you mean smart? What kind of answer is that? What kind of answer is smart? It's actually a set of abbreviations. It's an acronym. Of course, it's an acronym. SMART is right here. We've got a SMART analysis for being able to understand what these different troubleshooting tasks might be. If you have a storage device in your computer, then you have smart statistics that can go through and provide you with the status of how a particular storage device is performing. Usually these can be presented to you on the main screen of your operating system. It may be something that is sent from a separate application running on your computer, or you may have devices that are polling a device to get smart statistics from it. So you can see I've got a series of smart statistics here. For example, drive 4, I have a drive array, has a lot of different drives in it. Drive 4 has a smart status of normal and 8 bad sector counts on that drive. Bad sectors on a drive are not too unusual. Most of the time they are recoverable. They'll block those from being used again, and they'll move that to somewhere else on the drive. But you'll notice that on drive 11, this drive has had a reconnection count of 14, and a drive re-identification count of 1. Is that bad? Well, anytime I see red, I think maybe that's something I should keep my eye on. The drive is still running. This drive is still working. For some reason, it had a reconnection count. So we might want to do a little bit more research on that to understand that's something we might want to replace that drive, or do we still want to keep that running for the time being? Drive 12 is a similar scenario. The drive reconnection count is 8 and the re-identification count is 1. So those 2 drives I'm keeping my eye on. In reality, I've already taken that entire array and it has been retired. I got all new drives. I got a new array. It's all up and running. I should look at the smart stats for the new array and see how the new drives are running. Would be interesting to see. So if you're doing any type of self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology, the smart, that's where that comes from. This is a great way, by the way, to determine if a drive could be going bad. You might be able to replace a bad drive before it fails just by watching these statistics. So that's how valuable they are. Now, if it's just your computer at home, you might have already backups that are made. If you lose the drive, you simply replace the drive and restore from a backup. But when you're in a huge data center with hundreds or even thousands of drives, you may be swapping drives out quite a bit, and the smart statistics may be able to tell you which drives you would want to replace first. It's another one of these great statistics that you can monitor. Unfortunately, not enough people do monitor those statistics. They are incredibly important, and that's why smart was our right answer here. 33% of you said the Windows Event Viewer, and it is possible that some of those smart statistics could find their way into the Event Viewer, but this is a very good example of why you want to choose the most likely source. CompTIA does this all the time on their exams. They will give you multiple answers in a question that could be correct, technically, but not if you follow the rules that they put into the question, which would be the most likely source. This is clearly a smart alert, so we would choose smart for that. This has nothing to do with your power supply, so the 0% that chose that, all of you that answered 0 got it absolutely right. You did fine with that one. USB controller of 8%. This is not a USB error. This is a drive, a storage device error, and the storage device could be a hard drive. It could be an SSD. Smart statistics are available on both of those. And then we have a Wi-Fi analyzer. This is not a Wi-Fi error. Drive reconnection count thresholds have nothing to do with wireless networking, so it would not be Wi-Fi. Only 4% of you chose that one. In this case, our answer was indeed smart. 56% of you got that one absolutely right. That was the answer that we were looking for. Let's do another one, shall we? Let's go to the next question that is on our list. This next question asks, which 3 network types are used together or individually to determine the location of a mobile device? I'm not sure I set this up as a multiple choice question, multiple answer question. Did I? I'm not sure that I did. So choose one of them and we'll figure it out. I should probably work on that for my next one to be able to figure out the DCs. Did I do it right? Did I do a multiple? I think I might have. I think you might be able to do multiples on this one. The possible answers are Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, NFC, and GPS. So whenever you are looking at location services on your computer, it tells you where your computer is, it tells you where you are, it tells you where your phone are. There could be multiple ways to determine your location. 3 of those are on the screen, which means if we do the math, and I've done the math, 2 of these would not be choose all you did. Oh, good, I did a multiple. So choose 3 for your multiples in this one to figure out which 3 of these you would choose to answer this question. What 3 network types are used together or individually to determine the location of a mobile device? See if you happen to know what these are. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. You instead want to go to your link on the screen, professormesser.com/QA. There it is. Follow that link and be able to answer this question on that link. And we'll see how well you do with all of these. That link at professormesser.com/QA. It's the one on your screen. It's the one right there. It's the one right here. professormesser.com/QA. What's that QA stand for anyway? I forget. This is the one we would choose to be able to figure this one out. It's interesting, though, the idea of location services, why it's so important. We rely on it so often. We were talking about this, I mentioned earlier that I was traveling over this last week, and I used extensively maps to be able to move me from place to place. We almost don't even think about how to get somewhere any longer. We no longer stop in at the convenience store and ask for directions anymore. But how do we know where we are? Well, we have to use one or more technologies to be able to figure that out. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, which 3 network types are used together or individually to determine the location of a mobile device? Would you choose Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cellular, NFC, or GPS? What 3 of those would you choose? Let's see what 3 came in as your top 3 on this list. We got quite a few here. Wi-Fi, let's go all the way to the beginning. GPS is an obvious choice. The idea of having a global method to determine where you are in the world is, of course, one that you would choose, and 98, almost 99% of you chose that one. We have 94% that would also choose cellular as one of those connections. It's not as accurate as GPS, of course, but being able to triangulate between different cellular towers gives you an idea of where a person happens to be. So you can look at those signal strengths between those 3 towers and be able to triangulate, sometimes even 2 towers to be able to triangulate. That is certainly a good answer. So cellular, I will accept your 94, almost 95% of you chose that one. And then Wi-Fi at 80% came in. Wi-Fi, it seems like Wi-Fi is something local, isn't it? But there is an enormous database of every Wi-Fi SSID and BSSID. That would be your MAC address of your wireless access point, and the name of your wireless network is all saved in an enormous, actually multiple databases. There are many people that have this, and they do that by driving around and flying through the air and accumulating all of this data of where your systems happen to be. When I moved recently from one city to another, I moved my access point with me, and the access point was still showing that I lived somewhere else because the database was not updated yet. So having that 3 different levels of this can be very, very useful for triangulating where you happen to be, or even if you just have one, it could still be pretty accurate. Bluetooth doesn't provide you with a lot of location services, primarily because it has such a limited distance in communication. You can't reliably drive by someone's house and be able to see or hear all of the GPS or Bluetooth devices inside that house. So Bluetooth would not be a very good way to determine your location. NFC has a similar problem. The near field communication is something that does not communicate over long distances, so it doesn't make a very good location service. So if you had to choose 3 network types used individually or together to determine locations of a mobile device, those are the 3 that are used: Wi-Fi, cellular, and GPS. That's why you could disable GPS right now. It still might be able to locate where you are on the map based on Wi-Fi and based on cellular communication. So you do have at least options there to be able to understand what all of those things happen to be. And the one that we always know about, of course, the one that most of you chose that got the best answer here was indeed GPS. That is exactly what you would use to be able to do that, but you can use other methods as well. As we mentioned, having Wi-Fi and cellular turned on makes all of this work even better. So you have at least some options there. You did great on this one. We only had 9%, almost 10% chose NFC, and only 11.7% chose Bluetooth. Everybody else chose the other 3. You were spot on with this. Well done. One of the things that you'll notice, we've already gone through quite a bit already in networking. We've talked about port numbers. We've talked about GPS and location services. There's obviously much more on our Core 1 exam and Core 2 exams. And if you were to take our entire course, there are 137 videos and 19 hours of content. How in the world do you take all of that information and collapse it down into a single set of notes? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's exactly what we've done with Professor Messer course notes. We have them available for the 1201 and the 1202. I have both a physical version that you see on the screen right there. That's the physical version of the course notes. But I also have a digital version of the course notes that, if I was actually thinking ahead, would already have up on the screen. There it is. There's my course notes. Those course notes are available in PDF format. So I have both a digital edition and a physical edition. If you get the physical edition, by the way, you get the digital version for free. So while you're waiting on this to be printed and shipped to you, You will have immediate access to download the digital PDF as you go through there. Let's have a look. Since we're here, obviously there is a full table of contents, and this is clickable. So if you wanted to learn about, let's learn about cloud models, we'll click on that, and it takes you directly to the cloud models section. So you can see that all of the text from the videos is in here. All of the important charts are in here. All of the important graphics are in here. So if you wanted a way to have all of these videos collapsed into one set of course notes, this is where you would find it. This is exactly where this would be. This could save you a lot of time, and it can help you a lot once you've watched the videos. You can use this as a study source. This might be something useful to flip through while you're waiting to take your exam. You're in the outer rooms. They've already checked you in, maybe a couple of extra study moments, and it can be something that you can do constantly to update. Obviously, every video summary is in here. It is in the same format as the videos themselves, so you can follow along with the videos in the same order. Those are my course notes. They're available on my website. You can find out more about them at professormesser.com/1201notes, or follow the main link on the menus at the top of the screen, and you can find both the Core 1 and the Core 2 course notes there. It's a great way to support what we do here. And for everybody that's already supported us with these course notes, thank you so much for that continued support. Let's do another question, shall we? Here's a question I said I would never do again. So, of course, I'm doing this question again. This question asks, which of the following would be considered a private IP address? And you're about to find out why I said I'd never do this again. Is it 1.252.16.22? Is it 168.201.52.16? Is it 192.169.112.14? Is it 224.16.77.25? Or is it 172.27.254.160? This is why I said I would never do this type of question again for our exam test. So this is a good way to step through and determine where you could pick out this information. So obviously there's a lot there that we would need to know. Obviously I'm looking for a private IP address. You would have to know what a private IP address is. It would also help if you knew why there were private IP addresses. And then of course we need to know what those private IP address ranges could be. There's more than one range. So any of these answers that are here, any one of them could be correct, but only one is really a private IP address. So again, which of the following would be considered a private IP address? Is it 1.252.16.22? Is it 168.201.52.16? Is it 192.169.112.14? Is it 224.16.77.25? Or is it 172.27.254.160? There's a lot there going on. There's a lot that I have to say when we start working through those. So one of these is right. 4 of these are wrong. So at least that's not much of a hint, is it? Of course, that's what the answer is here. There's one answer for this question. Let's see if you got it right. Which of the following would be considered a private IP address? Is it one of these 5 things? Kind of snuck out of having to do that again. Let's just close the poll and see what you answered on this one to be able to understand what these might be. Wow, we got a big mix. We did not get a majority on this one, but 42% of you say it's 192.169.112.14. We have 31% of you that say it's 172.27.254.160. And then it's down to, well, we've got a couple at 10% at 1.252.16.22 and 168.201.52.16. Only 6% said 224.16.77.25. It's starting not to make sense to me either. Just so you know, I recognize this. So one of the things about private and public IP addresses is you're able to determine this based on really kind of the first 2 octets that we have here. For example, let's look at a chart that shows us the 3 different IP address ranges. So here's the chart right here. If your IP address is between 10.0.0.0 through 10.255.255.255, then that would be a private IP address. So if we were to look at this, none of these start with the number 10. So that range is not listed here. So it would not be one of the IP addresses in this 10 dot range. 192.168.0.0 through 192.168.255.255 is another private range. And if we look at that, 192.168 are the two octets that we would normally find. We got close to that. In fact, the 42% of you said the answer was 192.169. We're off by one number, and that's enough. That's a public IP address. It is not a private IP address. So it is not 192.169.112.14. So that is not the one that we would have there. So let's find out what the answer really is. It's 172.27.254.160. So in fact, if we look at our chart, you can see that 172.16 through 172.31 would be a private IP address. We don't commonly see those, I think because it's such an unusual range from 172.16 through 172.31. It's so much easier to remember 10 dot. It's so much easier to remember 192.168 because we tend to see that constantly. But the 172.16 through 172.31 network is also a completely usable private IP address range. So that is why 172.27.254.160, although it only got 31% of the vote, that's the answer that we were looking for. That is the one that we wanted to find. And you can see that all of the other IP addresses, none of them on this list fall into the categories that we have for this. So this entire chart that is here is extremely useful. But if you just had to remember one thing on this chart, remember this first column right here. Know what all of those IP address ranges happen to be. Knowing how many addresses is interesting, but not incredibly important for the exam. Knowing how that people used to describe these, a classful description, even though we don't use classes any longer to be able to describe networks, we sometimes refer to them in a colloquial sense. So we'll often say, what is the subnet mask for this network? Oh, it's a class C. Even though technically it's not class C, but when we say that, we know it's 255.255.255.0. So that is a good example of why we still talk about classful networks, even though technically class-based networks no longer exist. Also, the default subnet mask, host ID side, all of this comes from the RFC, specifically RFC request for comments number 1918. So sometimes you'll hear people talk about, oh, what's the 1918 address for that device? What they're saying is, what is the private IP address for that device? Sometimes you'll hear people refer to that and work through all of those different examples of those. RFC 1918 is where you would find these. If you wanted to really read up on private IP addresses, that would be a good place to start. And that's why our answer here was not the plurality of you that answered 192.169.112.14. We saw 192 and we went with it, didn't we? We're like, yep, that's the one. Oh, it's not the one. The actual answer here is 172.27.254.160. 31% of you got it right. You were absolutely correct. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and go to something that is not a networking question. Our next question on our list is this one, and it asks, a technician is configuring an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this device? Is it connecting remote sites over a secure link, scanning a large stack of pages, connecting two switches with fiber optics, authenticating to a wireless network, or converting between video output formats? Well, there's nothing more fun than an abbreviation, is there? There's only a couple on this exam. So this is one of those where you would need to know what this one happens to be. A technician is configuring an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this device? Is it connecting remote sites over a secure link, scanning a large stack of pages, connecting two switches with fiber optics, authenticating to a wireless network, or converting between video output formats? If you think you know the answer, go ahead and lock in your answer by going to professormesser.com/QA. Please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link at professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you happen to know what this one is. Yeah, there's only a couple of acronyms on this. We'll talk about that in a moment. about where we would even find all of these different acronym, abbreviation, summary word things that we use in this industry. This is where we really get into understanding the details of this. Unfortunately, it's sort of a natural part of almost any industry is a set of acronyms. Make sure you are familiar with these acronyms because they will pop up on your exam like this. Notice that we're not asking you what ADF stands for. That was not the question. In fact, it's very rare that you would see a question like that on your exam, if at all. Instead, they want you to see the acronym and understand what that means. How would you use it? Where does that come from? How would you implement that technology? That's exactly what this question is asking for. Let's see what you think the answer is. A technician is configuring an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this device? Is it connecting remote sites over a secure link, scanning a large stack of pages, connecting two switches with fiber optics, authenticating to a wireless network, or converting between video output formats? What did you choose? Let's find out. We'll close the poll. And we can see that, again, we're sort of torn. We did not get a majority on this one either, but 45% of you say the answer is scanning a large stack of pages. 17% said connecting remote sites over a secure link. 16% said connecting two switches with fiber optics, and 13% said authenticating to a wireless network. A lot of double-digit answers here. We're sort of all over the place, and almost double digits at 9% said converting between video output formats. Now, which one of these would you choose? An ADF is kind of the challenge here, is knowing what we are talking about when we say an ADF. And if you have a flatbed scanner or even a printer or a copier that's in your network, especially on your corporate network, you would find the ADF is there. You would know exactly where the ADF is because that is an automatic document feeder. There's an example of an ADF right here. You put all of these loose fed papers on the top of the device. You click go and it scans them or it prints them or it copies them. It does something with them. It pulls it in and it pulls in each page one at a time. You've seen these before. The automatic document feeder, especially useful on a flatbed scanner. You can put an entire set of papers on the top, say scan it, and then you can walk away. Scanning tends to take some time. So you can scan these in. It'll pull in one page at a time. And when you come back, all 20 or so pages, 30 or so pages that are here have been individually routed through the device and scanned or printed or copied or whatever it is that you would like to do. That is your automatic document feeder. That's what you would choose to be able to easily and conveniently perform this task with loose fed paper. So that is the answer that we were looking for. 45% of you said the answer was scanning a large stack of pages. That's exactly what you would use an automatic document feeder for. 17% said connecting remote sites over a secure link. That would be a VPN concentrator, I would guess, or a next generation firewall, or if you're really got an old device, maybe a UTM out there. 16% of you say connecting two switches with fiber optics. Well, that's sort of just a switching, isn't it? That's just normal connectivity that has nothing to do with an automatic document feeder. So that would not be what we would use there either. We've got authenticating to a wireless network. Well, we're authenticating using some type of authentication protocol, maybe 802.1x. Maybe we're using LDAP or Radius or TACAX or some other type. Kerberos, for example. Those would be ways to authenticate. None of those have anything to do with an automatic document feeder. And we have converting between video output formats. I have to worry about that quite a bit, but it has nothing to do with an automatic document feeder. In this case, the only answer that makes sense is the one that most of you chose, or a good chunk of you chose. 45% of you chose scanning a large stack of pages. That is an automatic document feeder. And if you see that abbreviation come up on your exam, now you know what they're talking about. You'll be able to answer that question without any problem at all. We still have some time left, so let's do a couple more questions. I've got one ready for you. This next question, what? You want a cloud question? Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's do a cloud question. Let's see if I give you the right screen. There it is. A provider provides cloud services for multiple clients located in different parts of the world. Which of the following best describes this cloud characteristic? Would that be elasticity, availability, metered, file synchronization, or multi-tenancy? A provider provides cloud services for multiple clients located in different parts of the world. Which of the following best describes this cloud characteristic? Is it elasticity, availability, metered, file synchronization, or multi-tenancy? It should be one that you can lock in. One of the challenges here, of course, is it could be multiples of these answers, but only one is really best description of what we are talking about here. Make sure you think about what's being asked so that you can answer in a way that makes sense. If you think you know the answer and it makes sense, you can go to professormaster.com/QA to lock in your answer. See if you know what this cloud characteristic is. All of these on the screen are cloud characteristics. So I'm not giving you a trick question. I'm giving you a question that contains 5 characteristics you already should know. So if you are looking at these answers and you're thinking, I don't think I recognize one of those, or I'm not really completely sure what that means, make a note of it so you can go back and study that for your exam. All of these answers could potentially end up in a question on your exam because they are all in the exam objectives. Let's see how you did with this one. A provider provides cloud services for multiple clients located in different parts of the world. Which of the following best describes this cloud characteristic? Would it be elasticity, availability, metered, file synchronization, or multi-tenancy? Let's see what you chose. I guess I should push that button, close the poll, and you chose 59% of you say multi-tenancy. 23% say that's availability. And then you have 10% that say file synchronization, 8% say elasticity, and only 1% say metered. There are a lot of different characteristics we need to know. I mentioned, of course, 8% of you said elasticity. Well, 8% of you were not correct, but that is a very important and very useful cloud characteristic. It may be that there is some elasticity associated with this, but there was nothing in the question that described elasticity. Elasticity is a way that you can increase the amount of resources available, especially for an application instance, or you can decrease the amount of resources available. This could be very important if you happen to be a business that gets very busy at certain times of the year and you need more cloud resources, or maybe it gets slow different times of the year. You can scale it down and not pay as much. One of the great benefits of cloud computing is the way that you can decide how much money you spend based on how many resources you are using. There's nothing in this question that talked about growing or shrinking the size of the cloud. That would really be based on elasticity. Here we're providing cloud services for multiple clients. So that's the real challenge. So of course you have availability. That's another important cloud characteristic, but not the one we were looking for here. Availability means we've got a lot of systems in place to keep this information always up and running. Make sure that people are able to access their data, able to use their applications, and they would always be available to them. Pardon me. We have next on our list file synchronization. This is something that's very useful, especially if multiple locations, and you want to be sure that all of those locations are working with the same data. You may have to take this data and synchronize it across these multiple data centers that could be located anywhere in the world. This question did not ask about file synchronization. It asked about multiple clients located in different parts of the world. Multiple clients are usually located in different parts of the world, but we don't have to do any file synchronization because we only have a single cloud resource here. There weren't multiple locations here where data was located. The multiple locations were where clients were located. So it would not be associated with file synchronization. The only two left on this list are metered and multi-tenancy. Metered is not on this list, I don't think. Metered describes a way that you are billed for these services. As I mentioned earlier, the more services you use, the more you will pay. The less services you use, the less you will pay, which is why elasticity is very often an important consideration, because elasticity allows us to scale up and scale down so we can really only pay what we are using, which is another important part of this. That leaves one answer left that would be the correct answer, and that's multi-tenancy, which is many different clients using the same cloud infrastructure. So if you're thinking about Microsoft Azure, you're thinking about Rackspace Cloud, you're thinking about AWS from Amazon, these are cloud services that multiple people are using simultaneously. Part of my website configuration is on the AWS cloud. So there are thousands and thousands, maybe millions of customers that they have on the AWS cloud as well, but I don't see any of their data and they don't see any of my data. That's because the entire cloud system has been set up as a multi-tenant cloud system so that I only see the services that I'm using, a different customer is only seeing the services that they're using, a third customer is only seeing the services that they are using, but all of those services are located probably in the same data center, and it could be that all of those cloud services are also in the same system, the same physical device. That's the beauty of multi-tenancy, is we can have one computer that many different customers are using, but to their view, it's a single system. They don't see any of those other pieces. Very useful to have it there and work through it. The important part of this is that we got it right. 59% of you say, yep, the answer is multi-tenancy. You knew it was multi-tenancy. You did a great job on this. 23% said availability. Now you can see why this question isn't talking about being available. It's talking about how you would have multiple clients connect into a single cloud service. Well, we also had 10% that said file synchronization. There was no mention of data being synchronized across different data centers here. And then 8% said elasticity. We didn't talk about expanding or contracting in this question. And we didn't talk about metered or billing for all of this information. The only one that really fits into the description of multiple clients that are, quite honestly, located in different parts of the world. Wouldn't it be weird if all your clients were in the same building? That probably is not the case. It's multi-tenancy fits perfect there. 59% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Now, I know we're at the top of the hour, but I would like to give you at least one final question that we could do. Of course, we're not done yet. We have our after show where I'm going to answer even more questions. You can, of course, do that by following along with us. So let's do another question. We got one that we're in overtime. We're going after the buzzers has gone off. We're absolutely going to do another question. This question I'm going to take from my practice exams book. If you haven't seen this, it's all the rage. Everybody's talking about the practice exams book. This is a set of practice exams that I created specifically because I didn't like what I was seeing on the internet. I didn't like that a lot of practice exams out there are asking you questions that have nothing to do with the exam objectives. A lot of them are outdated. A lot of them are written badly. A lot of them have wrong answers. And a lot of them don't have the same feel or the same style as the actual exam questions. So instead of complaining about it, I wrote my own book that has 3 separate exams, 3 90-question practice exams in here. It's 387 pages. It's a big practice exams book of performance-based questions and multiple-choice-based questions. This is to give you the same feel, the same style, the same tone as the actual exam. These are all original questions that I have written. So you aren't doing anything bad by reading through these practice questions. They are designed to give you a feel and a style of what you can expect on the actual exam. And I would say the same difficulty level as well. We worked really hard to make this as close as possible to the actual exam without giving you actual exam content, which should make you feel better. It certainly makes me feel pretty good. So what I have for you today is a question from my practice exams book. And this question is on page 15. There it is. It's question A43. And the question says, a system administrator is using a maintenance kit on a network-connected laser printer. Which of the following should be the last step when performing this maintenance? Would we examine the feed rollers, wait until the fuser unit cools down and replace it, reset the page counter, or replace the power cord? Got 4 things we can do for the maintenance on this device. Now, this is a PDF, which means we could do some annotation. In fact, if I see something on here that I would like to mark, oh, we're talking about feed rollers, I might want to highlight that. If I had a stylus, I could write on the screen with this. It's a PDF, so you can annotate, you can make changes to it, you can make notes on your screen so that you can see that later on when you come through. Another part about this that's useful is that I put links on these pages. So if you just want to know if the answer is A, B, C, or D, you could click Quick Answer. It would go to page 31. As I mentioned earlier, we're on page 15. If you ever work with a PDF, you know to get to that page, you have to scroll, and then I guess to go back, you'd have to scroll back. So what I did was I put links in here. This arrow that's here, we click on the details, turns into a little hand, and on page 78, we're going to click that, and we jump to page 78. Immediately. We didn't have to scroll at all, thankfully. And it tells us, here's the question again, a system administrator using a maintenance kit. It tells us the answer is C, reset the page counter. And very similar to other practice questions you've probably seen, I give you an explanation on the screen on why that is the right answer. My problem is I never get the right answer. I always get the wrong answer. And one of the things I always hate about other practice exams is they don't tell you why you got the wrong answer wrong. They spend a lot of time telling you why you have the right answer right. Well, if you got the right answer right, you probably know why you got it right. So we're missing an opportunity to learn even more about these topics. So in my book, every single incorrect answer is fully documented as to why it is incorrect. I cannot even tell you how important it is that even if you get the question right, spend a couple of extra moments reading through the wrong answers, because the wrong answers could be a right answer on your exam. So this is almost like getting 4 different topics on the same question. So we know why we would not examine the feed rollers, why we would not wait until the fuser unit cools down and replace it, and why we would not replace the power cord as the last step of maintenance. And of course, if you read this question, and like many of you have already said today, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean elasticity. I don't know what you mean these other terms that are the ADF that is on the screen. So if you don't understand the question, you can watch the video that I used to create this question in the first place. So if there's a technology or a set of terms that you don't understand, you could watch the video and then come back to this list. Not only do we have a link to the video here on the screen, so if you got it in a PDF form, that's very easy, but if you got it in the book form, those QR codes are also in the book. So you could use your phone and flip right over to that particular video by using those QR codes. One of the few times you'll actually see very, very useful QR codes. Actually works out pretty well to have those in the book. Once we have read through this, we understand why we got the right answer right or why we got the wrong answer wrong, and we're prepared for the next time we see it, or we watch the video. Now we can go back to where we started by using the back button. You may not even realize most of these PDF readers have a back button in them. There's my back button right there. So I will go back to where we started. We'll click the back button, click, and we're back to where we started on page 15. So now if we wanted to, we can go to the next question that's in our list. That is my practice exams book. This is specifically designed to be your last step in your studies so that you can take everything that you've learned with the videos, with the books, with maybe doing some hands-on labs, and now you can really test yourself to see if you really are ready to take this exam. And if you get it along with our course notes, you get a little bit of a cost break, a little bit of a discount if you get both at the same time. And of course, you can decide whether you would like the PDF version or the physical edition. I will send those out to you wherever you happen to be in the world. So I will ship anywhere where I can ship. There's sometimes in different parts of the world where I'm not able to ship. Those are very few and far between. There would have to be some type of disruption to the mail system, which does sometimes occur. I'm looking at you, Canada. I think everything's straightened out now, though. We went through a time when, there could be a problem with the unions. It could be that there's a problem with transportation. It could be there's a problem with weather. A lot of problems happen with shipping all over the world. Doesn't matter to me. I will send it to you wherever you happen to be if I'm able to. If you want to learn more about this, you can find it on our website, professormesser.com/core1PE. And again, thank you so much for that support. Today, we went through a set of topics and a number of things that people were wondering, where'd that come from? Where are those topics? Everything you need to know about this exam are contained within the official exam objectives. And I cannot tell you how important it is that you get your hands on these. They will tell you everything you need to know, and perhaps even more importantly, everything you don't need to know, which for some reason tends to be an enormous problem. I have people all the time sending me messages on Discord. They're sending me emails and saying, how do I memorize every single technical specification for every wireless network type? And my response is, why are you studying that? Nobody cares about that. You need to know what those wireless standards are, but you don't need to know a lot of specifics. How do I know that? Because CompTIA told me. And they told you too, because this is the exam objectives. Here's what the exam objectives look like. You can get these exam objectives on the CompTIA website. In fact, we'll go to the section 2.2 under the networking domain. Section 2.2 says, explain wireless networking technologies. We need to understand what the different frequencies are on our wireless networks. We need to understand channels, especially how they affect regulations. Local regulations affect those channels and the channel selection, the widths, the frequencies, and the bands. There's Bluetooth. We need to understand what 802.11 standards are. without knowing specific standards. How do I know that? Because specific standards are not listed on here. We need to know what NFC is. We need to know what radio frequency identification is, or RFID. That's what we need to know about wireless. So you don't need to spend time memorizing some esoteric, unusual specification for a wireless standard that was released 25 years ago that nobody uses anymore. Thankfully, you only need to know what's listed in this document. CompTIA sticks to this document like glue. That they don't go outside the scope of this document. And even if they do, most of the questions they would ask outside of the scope aren't graded. I will often tell people, if you go to this list and you know every single bullet that is in this set of exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam no problem, because they stick to this list so tight. Another thing I mentioned earlier was acronyms. I said there's a couple on the exam. In the back of this list are the acronyms. See, there's only a couple. There's one page, there's 2 pages, there's 3 pages and a quarter, 3 1/4 pages. So, okay, there's a couple. There's a couple more than I thought originally. There's more than 2, but there is a lot here. Fortunately, they document them all though. I don't necessarily think you should spend your time memorizing acronyms and what the words mean, but I think it's important that if you understood the acronym, what the words mean, and how to use the technology or where it applies into your network, that would be much more valuable. In fact, you sort of see that. I think if you go through the exam objectives themselves, you will organically learn the acronyms you need to learn. They're just sort of built into, in fact, a lot of these already have them. For example, under 3.2, summarize basic cable types and their connectors, high definition multimedia interface, HDMI, it's listed right there. Digital video interface, DVI, it's listed right there. VGA, video graphics array, VGA is listed right there. So you have a lot of the acronyms already there. Don't worry so much about the acronyms. Worry about the main part of these objectives. If you know this, you will pass your exam. That's how solid I feel about you knowing those things. Make sure you get your hands on those objectives. If you can't find the objectives, CompTIA has done a very good job lately of hiding them. What do I mean by that? Well, let's go to the CompTIA website and I'll explain to you what I mean about that. We will go to CompTIA.org. Here's the live CompTIA website. Make that a little bit bigger. Yeah, I accept all cookies. Anything you want to send me, chocolate chip. I'll take something with raisins in it. Doesn't matter. If you go to certifications at the top, it lists out all of the different certifications that you could choose from. Let's choose A+, since we're doing A+ today. And the first page that comes up is A+ Core 1 and 2, version 15. V15 is what they call version of the 220.12.01 and the 220.12.02. I'll also say, if you look at this list, if you look at the objective summary, this is just a summary. This doesn't tell me any details about the exam. But if you keep scrolling through this, you scroll down, you scroll down, you scroll down, you scroll down, you'll get to a red box. And the red box says, get A+ exam objectives and practice questions. You put in your email address, you submit it, and you have immediate access. In fact, I'll do it right now. I agree to the privacy notice, go. And it just gives you on the screen the objectives. You even get some practice questions there. So you can download the Core 1 objectives and the Core 2 objectives just by putting that in. But you have to scroll down to the red box. That's where that was. So don't rely on this summary page. That's no good. We don't need summary. We need detail. Make sure you scroll down to the red box. You put in your email address. That's where the objectives are. They really need that as a big banner right at the top. Click here for the objectives. That's how important they are. They should have arrows pointing to them. They should be flat, maybe not flashing. They need to be crazy colors. You need to be able to see them. I guess they sort of are crazy colors, aren't they? They're sort of red and purple. It's pretty good. We got a lot that we can work on there. That's where you'd find the objectives, and I think that's an important one to keep in mind. Incredibly important. Don't forget about your objectives. We do one of these study groups every month for A+ Core 1, Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus. That's 4 live streams we do every month. We haven't done any in November until now. We're halfway through the month, which means this week we have this study group today on Monday. We've got another Core 2 A+ study group on Wednesday. We have a Network Plus study group on Wednesday. We have to cram it in there because, of course, in the U.S., we have Thanksgiving this month, and we have one more study group in November as well in that last week of the month for Security Plus. And then in December, I've already got the date set for December 9th, December 11th for A Plus, December 16th for Network Plus, and December the 18th for Security Plus. But of course, we've got all of our November ones this week and next week. Don't forget about those either. If you're ever wondering when the next live event is going to be, you might even be watching this after November or December. You can go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/calendar, and we'll tell you exactly when the next live event might be. Well, we're through our first hour, but don't worry. We have much more to come. I want to answer your questions. You can submit those at any time through the link that we've been using today, professormesser.com/QA. It's a tab right at the top of the screen. Stick around for that after show, and I will ask you all of the questions. Well, not all of the questions you have, but a lot of the questions you have, we will go through and figure out the details. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you're in the US or Canada, you can save quite a bit of cash. All you have to do is go to professormesser.com/vouchers. Don't forget about our course notes. They're available on our website at professormesser.com/1201success. And of course, if you're on social media, we're also on social media. Find us at professormesser.com/ the name of the place that you want to go to find that particular social media site, /Discord, /X, /Twitter, /YouTube, /Facebook, /Instagram, /LinkedIn, something, / the thing. You will be able to find us wherever we happen to be, or you go to the Professor Messer website, upper right-hand corner, or all of the social media icons. Another great way to find us wherever you happen to be. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour. Stick around for the after show coming up immediately after this. Don't touch a thing. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time on the A+ study group. All right, one moment. I'm going to push a button. I'm going to take a sip from this right here so I can keep talking. Okay. And with that, let's bring up a better shot of this. This is kind of a boring slide. There we go. Hi, everybody. We made it to the after show. You guys did really well with the questions that we had in our first hour. I think it was a good mix of different topics. It seemed to be a little bit more challenging this time. We spent a lot of time on the questions this month. I'm trying different things to see how we can best ask questions the best way. And speaking of asking questions, this is your chance to ask questions. This is what we call our after show. This is a very open-ended, non-planned part of our live stream. I don't do any work to do this, but I do go through all of the questions that you are submitting to me through Q&A. And you can do that at any time right here. You can submit questions for the second hour of the study group anytime you'd like. Could have been in this first hour. I've got them back here. You're not going to see them on the screen immediately, but I will. So I'm going to go through each one of these questions that you've sent in. We'll find the ones that make some sense for what we are doing. And we'll go through and figure out what's going to be the best questions that we could possibly ask. We call this our after show. It's just sort of a way that we could hang out and ask questions together and maybe learn a little bit about IT, about certifications, or if you want to go outside the scope of that, you're able to ask any question you'd like. And most of the time, I'm pretty open to answering some of those. So I'm going to go to my screen on this side, and I'm going to go to my Q&A section and start going through the questions that you have. You could submit those using that link on your screen. Oh, some of you even mentioned you wanted that CEU code that I conveniently did not give you. So now we're going to give you the CEU code for this study group. If you are planning to take this exam for your or renew your existing certification using continuing education unit credits, CEUs, then I would like to be able to send you an email that would give you 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. The way that you would do that is you would go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. And if you do that, you can choose the link to contact us. That will bring up a form for the contact us. And in that contact us form, I want you to be able to put in your name, put in your email address. In the subject line, please put November 2025 Core 1 or A+, so I know where this came from. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, cloud computing, multi-tenancy. Cloud computing, multi-tenancy. Do we have it here? Cloud computing is where I'm pulling it from. Cloud computing, multi-tenancy. Those are your super secret code words of the month. Again, the way you would submit that to me for approval would be to go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website. You would click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. On the subject line, please put November 2025 Core 1. And in the body of your message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, cloud computing multi-tenancy. And that way, usually takes me about a week to get through all of these, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but I try to get through them as fast as I can. And then I will send you, you'll get an email from me. That email will certify that you were here for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. Be patient with me. I will get them out. And if you follow those instructions, you will receive an email from me regarding all of those. So now let's go to the questions that you have submitted. We can go through the list of these and maybe find something that you would like to know about. Let's start with something that's very broad, but a very common question that we tend to run into. Dimitri asks, hello, Professor. That's not the screen we want. Remember I told you I wouldn't know what to click today? Hello, Professor. I've recently had an interview with Microsoft for a tech support position. All right. We're sending good vibes already. I'll be starting in February, and I plan to take the Security Plus before that. I know, wrong study group. There's no wrong study group. You can ask any question you would like in the after show. This works perfect for what we want to talk about. I wanted to ask you if you have any advice for my future job or if there's anything I should prepare for. I don't know what products I'll work with, so general advice would be perfect. Thank you. This is exciting, right? So it sounds like you've recently had an interview. It sounds like you're starting in February. So first, congratulations are in order, especially today, these days. It's very tough right now in the job market. AI has sort of thrown a wrench into things for the past year. Global economies have been a challenge, but we're starting to see companies do a little bit more project work. And that's where you really understand when a company is starting to hire, is they have new projects starting. They're not just trying to keep things running at a bare minimum. They're actually doing additional things. We saw some of this in the last year with AI. Boy, that worked out well, didn't it? That worked out great. Suddenly now everything's AI and it's perfect. What could be better? A lot of companies are realizing, wow, we invested a lot of money in that. That might have not have been our banner day. That might have not been the smartest thing we've ever done. And we're starting to see people start to pull that back and think, how could we actually do something constructive with our money? And they're starting to invest in different projects now. So that's great news for all of us, because we're usually looking for a job or a better job. There need to be projects going on so that companies will start hiring more. We're starting to see a little bit of a shift that way, just a little bit. And that's what you need to get started, is a little bit in the right direction. So this is certainly a good question. If you are someone starting a new job, doesn't even necessarily have to be an entry-level position, doesn't necessarily even have to be at Microsoft. The question now becomes, how do you prepare for this? Especially if it's your first job in IT. You should already keep in mind that you will not know everything you need to know the first day. You're not going to know everything you need to know the third month. You probably are not going to know everything you need to know 6 months in. This is a long, involved process where you will become a sponge and you will try to learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. Those first 6 months of a tech job, your very first tech position, is all about you learning and watching and trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. Also, it's important that you understand internally within the organization where you go to get problems resolved, where you go to get questions answered, who knows about different technologies. These are things that are important. And you may even be asked to become an expert in a certain type of technology. This is what a lot of companies will do, is they will have SMEs, subject matter experts. These SMEs are usually distributed throughout your department. So you might have somebody in your department who's really good with the Active Directory. You might have somebody in your department who's really good with automating Azure. You might have somebody in your department who's really good with the internals of Windows troubleshooting. I picked 3 Microsoft technologies because that's the ones we're talking about in this question, but it also applies whether you're starting with a technology company or with a transportation company or with a finance company or with any other type of vertical market. Maybe you're starting at a hospital. There will be different challenges depending on the different markets you happen to be in. Windows is Windows, the cloud is the cloud, but when you get into very specific environments, you will find that a hospital has a very different set of priorities for their technology than a financial organization. It sort of makes sense right off the bat. We know that that's going to be the case. So the question here is, do you have any advice for my future job, or if there's anything I should prepare for? The worst thing you can do is walk in and pretend that you're the expert, because you're not yet. You will be an expert in some technology. You will. You will become very familiar with a very particular set of technologies, and you will suddenly find yourself very, very knowledgeable, in some cases more knowledgeable than other people in your department. So you will probably find yourself as an SME in about 6 to 9 months. So it's important that you're able to listen. It's important that you ask questions. This is the one thing that I've always hoped that people would do when they started an organization, but you're sometimes worried about asking questions. You don't want to ask too many questions, of course. You don't want to spend all of your time with an interrogative. Every time somebody says something, you don't want to ask a question about it, but there will be times when somebody's stepping through a technology and you're like, hold on, you just did something there that was interesting. What was that? Can you back up just a second and show me what happened there? You know, those are important things. If you don't get it, don't be quiet. There will be times when something happens and whoa, what just happened there? What was that? Show me that again. Most of the time, the technology people you're going to work with are really good about wanting to bring you along and show you these things. It's one thing I've always loved about IT, is that people are so willing to spend their time and their knowledge teaching you the things that they know. It's pretty much across the board. Now, you will, of course, find some people that just aren't very personable. Well, that's the world, isn't it? That's just sort of normal. Don't worry about them. You don't have to worry about asking them questions. Go to the people that are the helpers. Go to the people that are willing to bring you along, and you need to spend the time on your side learning what they are teaching you. The more you are able to get into, certainly the best part of the learning process is during that first 6 months on the job. Nobody's expecting you to be an expert yet. You can fly a little bit under the radar, make sure you meet all of the expectations for your management, but then spend a little time on the things you don't know. I'll also tell you, one of the things that really helped me when I was starting out in this industry is there were a lot of people I worked a lot of little jobs right out of college. I was a field service technician. There's not a lot of people you're working with as a field service technician. You're the only one. So I really didn't learn very much from myself as a field service technician. I kind of stumbled through it. But my second job out of school was at a insurance company. And as an IT department of an insurance company, there's a lot to work with. There's a lot of Windows. There's a lot of printing. There's a lot of networking. There's a lot of wide area networks. There's a lot that goes on. And one of the things I always found when I first got into that position was that I needed to learn as fast as I could. One of the things that was really useful was the people I was working with, I was in a kind of a help desk role, kind of a generic single help desk role. There was no specialization. It was more of a fix the desktop kind of role. But I was very interested in networking. I was very interested in servers. We had a networking team. We had a server team. And I would ask them, hey, are you guys doing any projects coming up that I could just hang out and sort of shadow you? Most of the time, people love getting a couple extra hands, especially if they're willing to put things in a rack. If you got somebody that's willing to lift heavy items, put it into the rack so people can screw those in, having a couple extra hands can be really useful. And it might be a good investment of your off hours or even of your weekend days. I know that's a big ask, but it can really, really help you if you could spend a little bit of time with them to see, oh, we're upgrading a WAN link this weekend. Oh, we're implementing a new switch configuration. Oh, we're upgrading code on our routers or our firewalls. I just want to look. And most of the time, you don't even know what you're looking at. They're typing things in at the command line. Things are going by, but pay attention and watch what they're doing, and even get them to do a little bit of commentary. Oh, what are we doing now? Well, I'm typing this in because this is going to configure this particular interface to be a trunk port, and we'll do this, and here's how you do that. Those are great things to watch even if you don't capture the nuance of every command they're typing in, even if you aren't paying attention enough to be able to repeat this later on, you're not going to be able to do that. What you should do is watch and learn and get at least a little bit of that taken in, so that when they're done, you at least know the process they went through. You understood sort of the internal change control that's required for this, and you learned a little bit about that technology. I will also tell you that if you are willing to put your time and your effort into learning those technologies, you will, of course, be smarter about those technologies, but that type of dedication does not go unseen. So the moment that you get to that 6-month time frame, you've been at the help desk, you've learned every possible way to reset a password, you've learned every possible way to ship out a new laptop because they ran over it with their car, you've done all of those things that you are expected to do as part of your help desk. Now it's time to move up. Now it's time to level up into a different department. Well, you've already worked with the server team. You've already worked with the networking team. They already know you. So what could be better to move up in your ranks, to move up in the organization, than to have already worked with those people? So this is the investment that you need to make. There are a number of people that will tell you, don't waste your time coming in on the weekend. Why are you sacrificing your personal time to do that? And I guess there is a point to that, of course. Some people say you shouldn't work where you're not getting paid. Well, most of us are on a kind of a salary when it comes to higher level professional positions, but there are, especially help desk, there's still quite a number of hourly type jobs. So you may not be paid for coming in and shadowing somebody on the weekend. This isn't about you getting paid. This is about your investment into yourself. That's the important part of this. How much is that worth? That's incredibly valuable, because now you know a little bit more than other people know about that technology. You've watched it happen with a professional on your staff. You've now worked through the details and understand the processes internally. And I got to tell you, the best thing you can hope for is something to go wrong, because now you get to see, what do you do when things go wrong? I think that's really the only time you learn, is when things go wrong. The stress level gets higher. Now suddenly you have to make plans. Okay, we could do A, we could do B, or we could do C. Which one of those do you think is going to solve the problem? That's a very good way to go about this. When I was on this service desk that I worked on at the insurance company, I loved the networking side of things. It's something that really appealed to me, was the network. I moved from a workstation support, sort of a workstation admin position. I worked into a server admin position. And from there, I moved into a networking position. I loved the network. I love protocols. I mentioned the story before. The time that I really recognized that I fell in love with networking was the organization that insurance company that I was working for brought in one of the early protocol analyzers from Network General called the sniffer. It's kind of a generic term that we use these days, but it's actually the name of a product called sniffer. It took the industry by storm. And they plugged it in, and suddenly all of the things that were on a wire that you couldn't see, you couldn't hear, you had no idea what was going across that wire. We plugged in the sniffer, and it started making these noises. It started making kind of like a Geiger counter. Every time a packet would go by, it would make a ticking noise. So if the network was relatively slow, wasn't a lot of traffic on it, it would go tick, 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 tick. But if it was very busy, suddenly you had suddenly there was a lot of radiation on the network. It would just make tons of noise of these tickings. So we were able to see everything that was going on. And one of the nice things about a protocol analyzer is you see everything. You see the application in use. You see the layer 4 protocols that are in use. You see the layer 2 protocols that are in use. You see the physical layer of what's going on. You see everything. In fact, if you ever wanted to become really familiar with how networks operate, you almost want to start with the protocol analyzer. It shows you everything. And I think it's a valuable way to consider if you're working through and trying to figure out the details of how you would work through it. I think this was a great question to describe this, so that you could understand, if you're starting a job, how do you get off on the right foot? How do you not create a problem? And how do you position yourself so that you're really going to be ready for the next phase of your career? We often get those questions in an interview. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is a technology. you don't even know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. It goes a little crazy. So one of the things that I often will tell people is don't worry so much about what you're doing 5 years from now. What are you doing next? You need to know what your next step will be. Sometimes you can plan that. Sometimes you can't plan that. I've had lots of times in my career where I've not been able to know what was coming down the line. It just sort of happened like a lightning bolt out of the sky. And I suddenly went a direction I wasn't expecting. Sometimes that happens, but you have to position yourself to be there. The way that you position yourself is you work hard to have all of those training / learning / sponge type knowledge transfers. You need to have already gone through those so that you're ready when this happens. You know, they often say that there's no such thing as luck. It's just preparation so that when the opportunity comes along, you're ready. And there is a lot of truth to that. So I think you should plan and be ready. So when the lightning strikes, you're ready to go immediately. Another nice thing to think about. Let's do some more questions. Again, you can submit questions at any time using the link on your screen. Go to professormaster.com/QA to submit those questions. Let's talk about doing practice exams. This one specifically, not a format of mine, but this is one where Ola asks, hi, Professor, I wanted to ask you about the format of the Security Plus exam or any other CompTIA exam. I usually score about 85 on your practice test, but I recently took the CompTIA CertMaster practice exam and only got 53%. The questions felt extremely difficult and very long. As a non-native English speaker, it was honestly discouraging. Do you think the actual exam is easier questions compared to CertMaster, or should I start slipping into a light depression? Well, I think a light depression is fine for all of us, really. Shouldn't we kind of live in the light depression area? Maybe that's just me. Do not be depressed. CertMaster is a relatively complex set of questions. They are challenging in topics. They are challenging in their style of question. They don't tend to be an emulation of the same style that you would get on the actual exam. My book was written with the same tone and the same style as actual exam questions. So people will go through this sometimes and say, this is so much easier than CertMaster. Well, this is what you would find when you go in the exam. And I'm not the only one saying that. There's other people that have taken this practice exam book. They've gone to the exam. They go, wow, that was like I was reading your book when I took this exam, because I tried to use similar tone, similar types of wording. CompTIA has a very specific way of asking questions on the exam. There's a number of nuances that I won't get into here, but there's a method that they use, almost it's like an iambic pentameter. It's like a very specific tone and style of putting questions on the page. And I tried to, in many ways, emulate that. CertMaster does not. In fact, their questions tend to be relatively convoluted, as you mentioned here. And if English is not your first language, you did great. 53% is fantastic on CertMaster for someone who knows English. And you don't even know, you're non-native English, so it's even more of a challenge. 53% I think is pretty good there. But they are good questions. The content of the questions on CertMaster is still applying to exam objectives. The problem is that they're written very differently than the actual exam. It's one of those things you have to kind of balance out as you're going through your studies is, do you want just more questions, or do you want something that really focuses in on what I could expect on an actual exam, which I think is an important part of this as well. You have to have both of those. You have to have the knowledge, and in many ways, you have to be aware of what an actual exam will look like. And if you've never taken one before, it's just a mystery. That's another reason I did this book, so that you could read this book, go through these questions, and now you feel a little better about what you could expect to find on the actual exam. Now, if they suddenly decide tomorrow to change every question on the actual exam and they're much harder and they've done something different, I'll have to rewrite the book. But so far, they have not done that. So we're in pretty good shape. And that's a big goal for me, is making sure that you have everything you need to walk into that exam room and just crush it and just get the best score that you could have ever imagined. And I think you need tools that are going to focus your efforts into accomplishing that, That's all we do. That's what we do with our videos. That's what we do with our course notes. That's what we do with our practice exams. It's what we do with our success bundles. We even have other things coming later this year that indeed, it should be this year, maybe the beginning of next, that will be even more study resources, something that can maybe help you get through that exam even better. Such a good question. Thank you for submitting that. I think you're going to do fine. Don't worry so much about the CertMaster scores. Focus instead on the content on the CertMaster, and I think you'll be okay. Let's keep going. And this is, speaking of practice questions, this is a good practice question that I want to go through. This is from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, I recently bought the practice exams PDF for the 1201. Thank you, by the way, Anonymous. We really do appreciate that. Anonymous continues, will the questions in this practice exam book be different than the questions in these live sessions? Absolutely. So everything that's in this book is exclusive to this book. I don't share the questions from this elsewhere. It's not part of your daily pop quiz emails that you get. It's not part of these live streams that you get. I write all the questions for the live stream new every month. There's a lot of work that goes into creating the questions during that first hour. And so A+ Core 1, A+ Core 2, Network Plus, and Security Plus live streams are all new questions that have nothing to do with the questions that you'll find anywhere else. They're all different. The questions you have in your daily pop quizzes, if you haven't signed up for your daily pop quiz, you should. You get a new A+ question every day. That's a very unique set of questions that are written specifically for pop quiz. The questions you get on these live streams have been written specifically for these live streams, and they don't repeat any of those others. I try not to. And then the questions in this practice exams book are also unique to the practice exams book, and you won't find them anywhere else either. So that's an important consideration. Is I don't think, wouldn't that be awful if you were taking your practice exams every day, you get the email every day for the pop quizzes, and you don't even know, then you go through this book and you think, I recognize some of these. It's not going to happen, because all of these have been written exclusively for this book, just as all of the pop quiz questions are written exclusively for that. For those of you wondering about the pop quiz questions, if you go to professormesser.com, I should probably put this on my main menu. It pops up now as part of a box that is in the sidebar. And I think it only shows up every couple of pages, which is not a great place to go to. So I need to provide you with a link for the pop quiz registration. It'll show up on my website looking like this. If you scroll down there, if you see the green box there, get my pop quiz in your inbox. Daily and weekly pop quizzes, A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. And let's keep going. Thank you, Google, for doing that. And it brings you to a page where you can register for any of those, for A+, for Network Plus, and for Security Plus. And just for fun, for those of you that are here live, it's now in the chat. So you can, of course, find that link very, very easily if you would like to sign up for those on the practice exams book. So yes, if you got the practice exams PDF, you won't find these questions anywhere else for that very reason. I want to give you the best opportunity to learn that content, and I think that's a good way to go about doing it. More questions. Let's keep going through this list, making all of these happen. If you'd like to submit a question, there's the link on your screen. You can go into all of those and submit a question at any time. This is kind of a broad question, but it is a common question, and I do want to address this. This is from Rich, who asks, should I get my A+ if I already have my Security Plus and Network Plus certs? This is a common question I get. I get a similar style of question I get is, what certification should I get first? Or I have my A+, what should my next certification be? Should I jump over Network Plus and get Security Plus? Should I go Network Plus second? Should I go Security Plus third? What should I do? How should this work? And I can't answer that question for you, because everybody has their own path that they are following. Everybody has their own objectives that they're trying to get through. Everybody has a different set of exam or certification requirements or career goals. So the the objective with any industry certification is there's really a couple major aspects to getting a cert. The first one, and the one we always talk about, is employers are often asking for a particular certification. So it would behoove you, it would be important for you to get that certification so that you can say, yes, I have that checkbox. I suddenly will move ahead of other people in the interviewing process who don't have this certification. At least that's how it's supposed to work, right? So that's one part of it, is that employers want that cert, therefore I should go get that cert. Let me give you an example of where this would be different depending on who you are or where you are. If you live in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, that federal government area of the United States, you will find that a lot of the positions in that geography are asking for a Network Plus or similar certification. That's because there's such an emphasis in security for the federal government that they require you to have a minimum of a Security Plus or compatible cert. They aren't asking for an A plus. They are not asking for Network Plus. They don't care about those as much. You won't see those listed, but you will always see Security Plus pop up constantly on these job postings. If you want to test this for yourself, go to your favorite job posting site. Go look up jobs in Washington, D.C. that are IT related and have a look at what they're asking for, and you will see that as well. Now, if you're in Minneapolis, if you're in LA, if you're in Dallas, if you are somewhere else in the country, you may find that the density of positions requiring Security Plus are nowhere close to what DC wants. In fact, you may find that in your area, everybody wants you to have A plus. You may find in your area, everybody wants you to have an AWS and an Amazon Web Services cert. You may find they want Network Plus or some other certification. The goal, if you're looking to know what do I do next, it's not your answer. It's what other people want you to do next. And that's kind of the challenge with IT, is finding that right mix between what I like doing and what people need me to do for them. Now, one great thing about IT is that we need people everywhere. We need database professionals. We need data professionals. We need server professionals. We need Linux. We need Windows. We need cloud. We need networking. We need security. We need everything. So regardless of what interests you, there's probably some jobs available that are looking for those particular skills. But it may also be determined on where you live in the country as to what certifications are more popular in your area. So there's your two things to go with. You want to think about, what do employers want me to learn? But then you also need to know, what do I like? What do I want to learn? And you can often kind of push your career direction in that particular area if there is a need in your particular geography. Now, if you're looking through a bunch of job postings in your area, let's say you live in Chicago and you're looking at a bunch of jobs and none of them are asking for Security Plus, should you then go out and get Security Plus? Probably not. You should instead go through every single job posting that you think you would qualify for, and you should document, you should create your own little spreadsheet or database showing every position in your area, what they would like for a formal education, what type of industry certifications they would like. If there are specific applications or tools that they would like you to know, you should document those. And you should maybe find out if you happen to know anybody who works there. Those 4 elements are extremely important when it comes time to sitting down and having an interview. Telling somebody, yep, I have a formal degree of some kind, an AA degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or wherever it happens to be. You need to tell somebody, I have the certifications that you were asking for. I have my Network Plus, I have my A Plus, I have my Security Plus, whatever that is. You have some type of work that you've done with these, some type of not necessarily professional work that you've done, but some practical work. And we can all do this. We could set up our own home labs. We could set up our own firewalls. We could set up our own Active Directory infrastructure, and we could run effectively the same network they're running, but in our home on virtual machines. Absolutely doable. And then lastly, the one that I threw in there at the end, I know somebody who works there. It's remarkable how valuable that is. They often tell you it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's really both. It's really what you know and it's who you know. So if you know someone who works there, you can name drop, talk about what you know about the organization, talk about having some type of conversation with them as a professional acquaintance. I mean, you don't have to hang out at their house, but it's important that you recognize them, you know who they are, you've met them before. Well, how do you do that? How do you meet somebody that you've never met? Well, you have to be where they are. So if you have not attended a Microsoft user group meeting in your area, you should go to one. If you've not been to a Palo Alto Networks user group meeting in your area, you should go to one. How about ISSA for security? What about a Cisco user group meeting? There's tons of user group meetings. They're all over the place. So find one and go to the user group meeting in person. Yes, not on the web, not in a box, not on a Zoom. You go to the meeting so you can meet people, so you can see what the environment is for hiring in your area. Where are people located? And you can meet these people so that, in fact, they might even ask you for a resume. This is something that happens a lot. A lot of these large organizations have finder's fees for hiring someone. So they will take resumes from the people that already work there. It's an employee referral program. And if somebody in their organization brings your resume to HR, they get their name associated with you. And if you get hired, you get a job and they get a finder's fee. So they get a few $100 in their pocket. And because you've met them, they know who you are. The HR department trusts you a little bit more because you are a known entity. And now you can get a job there and everybody wins. So you may find a lot of people, I used to work with somebody who's really good at this. Every time they would meet someone new, they'd ask for their resume. Every single time. If there was any interest at all, they would ask for their resume and they would submit everybody's resume to HR. They would just lock in their name. So if anybody got hired ever, I feel like they always got paid. I'm not sure how they did that. They were very good at doing that. But that's another example of how sometimes they will ask you for your resume. You should absolutely send them off to there. That's another one of those things that can really help you. So the question that Rich asked is, should I get my A+ if I already have my Security Plus and Network Plus certs? The answer is absolutely. And the answer is maybe not. It just depends. What do you want to do? What do employers want you to do? Find the magic part in the middle there that makes sense. And you may find that your thoughts of getting an A+ aren't really necessary, but everybody seems to be asking for this certification. Maybe that's the one I should go with. It's not an easy answer. There's no single answer for everybody. Everybody's a little bit different. And if we had time to sit down and talk about your background and talk about where you live and talk about what you want to do, we could potentially come up with a couple of scenarios that might make sense. But it takes a little bit of time to do that. You can do this yourself. You don't need me for that. You just sit down and figure out what it is you want to do, what employers are asking about. It may take a little bit of research, but you're sitting in front of the TV. It's a perfect time to surf around, start a little database, put a Google Sheet together. I talk about this in my video. It's on the YouTube video description of this video, how to get a job in IT with no experience. And I go through those 4 scenarios. It's a 30-minute video. It's a big video, but like everything else, it's just chock full of information. I don't ever have any downtime in my videos. You've noticed it is constant hitting you with information. So absolutely, you should have that thought already. Have a look at that video. Maybe that will give you some ideas as well. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so let's get a couple questions in before we're able to stop today. I got a lot here to pass through. So we did a couple things today where I showed you the results of the output of a command, and I asked you questions about the output. And that's something that you'll commonly see on the exam as well. Following up on that is a question from Cam that asks, with command prompts, what is a good way to study each command to understand uses and what they are? Well, this is a challenge because if you go to the official exam objectives, and when we're talking about command prompts, we really are talking about, as far as A+ is concerned, we really are talking about the exam objectives for the Core 2 exam, which I don't have up on my screen. So I'm going to bring those up by going to the 1202 objectives, because that's where all the good command lines are, is in the 1202. There's only a few in the 1201. So I've got the 1202 exam objectives here. There they are, the 220 1202. That's the Core 2 exam. It's interesting. They don't even use the same version number that they're using on their website for these. Maybe they've added it in the most recent version. But I'm going to scroll over to right here. 1.9 is the section for, let's start with 1.5 because that's Microsoft. So here are the Microsoft command line tools you need to know. CD, dir, ipconfig, ping, netstat, nslookup, netuse, traceroute, pathping, and so on and so on. There's a lot of commands here. Oh, you think that's something? Let's go to 1.9. Here are all the ones for Linux. There's even more for Linux. There's a lot more on this screen. So you've got a lot of command lines to know. One of the things that I do in all of my videos is I go through each one of these commands individually and I demonstrate every single command so that you can see how does netstat work, what are the results of the netstat command, and what do those results mean. Same thing with nslookup, same thing with netuse, same thing with traceroute, same thing with pathping, and so on and so on. I think looking at somebody running the commands is useful. I think it may be a little bit more useful for you to run them yourself. There's something about hitting the keyboard, typing the keys, hitting enter, and seeing the results that it's a muscle memory. There's some type of synapse that fires in your brain. It's stored somehow differently than watching somebody else do it. And I think that's an important part of this. It's useful to watch someone else do it so you can see what it does, but I've designed my videos with commands that you could do on your own computer. So the trace route I use on my computer, you can run the same trace route because I'm not trace routing a local IP address. I'm doing a trace route to Cloudflare or to Google or something like that. And you can do the same trace route to Cloudflare or to Google because they're public on the internet. So I think that's another one that becomes useful is you understanding what that command does, when you would use that command, some of the syntax that's necessary to run the basics of that command, and then what that command is telling you and being able to interpret the results of that command. That is your key right there. That is not only good for the exam, that's really good in general. You can use these commands and you will use these commands throughout your entire career. So this will be very, very useful in your initial knowledge. It will be useful for you earning your certification. It's also going to be useful if you're someone who is really working on understanding how to use these in the future. And you will be using netuse, and you will be using traceroute. You will be using the ping command. You will be doing the net commands. Those are incredibly important. So keep your eye on what they are, how they work. And I just think it's hands-on. I think it's using them and becoming familiar with the output becomes super important. So that's pretty useful thing to think about. Make sure you are familiar with all of that and familiar with it. Question from Giuseppe says, will there be a section on the website to help us practice for the new 1201 and 1202 version? Yes, there will. You can see not only do we have 1202 content, but on the website, of course, all of the latest exam objectives and videos are, of course, there. You'll notice that if you go to professormesser.com, right at the top, it says they're the 220, 1201, and 1202. So you've got the video courses, you've got course notes, you've got practice exams, you've got downloadable videos, the study group replays. We just put everything out there. And if you're wondering on the 1201 exam, what's new on the 1201? Well, I've got a document right here. What's new in the 220, 1201? I've got a full article where I broke down every single piece of that exam. And I show you, got to have a nice Venn diagram, right? I show you what was on the 1101, what's on the 1201, what are the differences, and what is the same, so that you can get an understanding of just how different that exam might be. And if that's not enough, I go through every single section of the 1201. I tell you what's been dropped. I go through every section of the 1201 to see what's been added. So you've got a nice mix here. Oh, they added, for example, in the 1201, they added USB-C video cables. They added BIOS temperature monitoring. They added printer firmware. So if you've been studying for the older version and you're thinking, what do I need to study to bring myself up to speed? This will tell you everything. And it's all in there. So that's another place you can go to get a little bit more information. Of course, all of our videos are here for the latest version of the exam. Everything's there. Everything is all set and ready to go. People will ask me all the time, hey, when are you going to release the new videos? That was 6 months ago, brother. We got those done a long time ago. They're already ready for you. We are set. Whatever you need, we got it for you. They're all on the website. That's something that does not happen overnight. There's a lot of work that went into getting all of that content done, and we're not done yet. There's still more that's going to be coming out. So there's always something new. There's always something we're working on. So another thing to think about if you are working towards your exam, of course, we're going to have all of that content available for you. Let's get another question in. I know we're at the top of the hour. We can go a little bit over time, right? Certainly. We can make that happen. Let's keep going through your questions. Let's see what other things you might have. So this is probably what a lot of us are doing. And it is a common scenario. This is from Mario, who asks, hey, Professor, I'm looking to take the Network Plus exam in December. I have knowledge of networking. I have access to the CompTIA Network Plus exam content. I'm watching your videos on Network Plus. What is your advice to me to trying to take this all on my own with no official tutor? Well, one of the things that I think we've proven now over the last 20 years of making these training courses is that you don't need an official tutor necessarily. With some people, they like to go to a classroom. They like the social part of it. They like doing it over a long time frame, and they like maybe months of time to be able to study for their exam. They like having some of the hands-on in the classroom environment. That's certainly valuable. But I think a large percentage of people that are taking their A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus, or any of the other certifications out there is they do it all themselves. And I think you need 4 different elements to really be successful with studying for yourself. We have broken this down into a type of memorization we call WRAP, W-R-A-P. We think that everybody studying for their exams should follow the WRAP method. The W in WRAP is to watch videos. Watch a good video course that takes you through every exam objectives that is specific to the latest version of the exam objectives and shows you plenty of not only lecture, but also hands-on. Well, that describes our course to a T. The R in WRAP is to read a good book. More than just course notes, you may want to consider investing in a full textbook that effectively duplicates what you are watching in the video. Well, why would you want to duplicate your efforts of watching what's in a video? Well, it's because a book teaches you in a different way. Books are very dense. Having just text allows you to fit a lot of information in a very small area in a very quick time frame. Videos tend to have, I guess there's some level you could speed up or slow down if you wanted to, but videos tend to focus on having a step you through in a very methodical way, and talking is a lot slower than reading. It's physics. That's just how it works. So from my perspective, I think video is important because the visual part of it can be very valuable, especially for demonstrations and especially for lecture. But there's also value in the book. It teaches you differently. So there's the R. You've watched the videos, you've read the book. Now we have an A, which is to apply what you have learned with labs. Applying this we have labs on our site from CompTIA, which are very good labs. Or you can maybe do labs yourself. Set up your own labs on your own system and run through, open a command line, run a trace route, run a ping, run a net use, run those commands that you see on your screen. As I mentioned, you can follow along with me in the video and run those commands for yourself. And finally, the P is to practice. You want to be able to take something like a practice exams book, like a series of practice exams. And now that you've gone through the watching of the videos, the reading of the book, and applying what you've learned with labs, now you can see how well did you really learn it. Do you really know? You don't want to start with practice exams. I see people do this all the time. They start with the practice exams and being able to work through it. But I don't think starting with practice exams gets you very far. You're not going to know any of the answers. And then when it comes time to actually review, you're going to remember what you've seen before. So don't do that. Wait until you've gone through all of your training to then finally shift your focus over to practice exams, the P in the RAP method. I think those 4 methodologies are a good way to have a nice balance across the different training mechanisms: video, books, hands-on, practice, exams. But it also gives you different information, sometimes from different resources, in a different way. And sometimes having it explained one way and then having someone explain it a different way suddenly makes it all come together for you. And I think that it's a combination. You're sort of building on those as you go. And the more you build, the more knowledge base you're going to have with all of them. So that's what I would recommend, Mario, is that RAP method. I think that's a great way to go about learning, understanding, and having all the tools that you need to be able to walk into that exam room and just crush it. But it's sometimes people get away with 3 of those. Sometimes people only watch the videos. It also depends on your own personal knowledge base. Maybe you've already been working in the industry for years. You've already put together your own networks before. You don't really need someone to explain to you what a switch is. But those of us that have never touched a switch before, we want to know more about it. So it really also depends on what you have done. Sometimes you can get away with just videos. Sometimes you can get away with just a book, or maybe 2 of those. Maybe you don't need practice exams. Maybe you do. Completely up to you. I can only give you my recommendation for all 4 of those. You decide what works best for you. And ultimately, the exam objectives is going to be your checklist. The objectives will tell you if you know everything or if you don't know everything. It's another one of those ways that you could maybe focus on the exam and not so much focus on what do I do to learn everything I need to learn. You stick to the basics, you stick to those fundamentals, and you're going to be just fine on that exam. Ultimately, your exam objectives will tell you everything you need to know about how well you have learned that content or how well you have not learned that content. Those objectives can be extremely valuable. They make a great checklist. That's the secret right there, is those exam objectives. I wish more people used those. They would know and understand immediately if they're really ready to take that exam. The more you can check off on that list, the better you are. If you don't know something, circle it, mark it, put a color on it, and so that you can go back and really learn the content as well as you possibly can. Well, we've hit the top of the hour. That happened very fast, didn't it? But I think we went through quite a bit today. We had great questions and answers in the first hour, and your questions in the second hour have been phenomenal as well. As I mentioned, by the way, we're doing multiples of these this week in an unprecedented number of live streams this week. We have one today. We're doing our Core 2 A+ student study group on Wednesday. Come on back 12 noon Eastern for that one, same time, just on Wednesday. And then if you're studying for your Network Plus, or you just like networking in general, like I do, you might want to show up on a very different, a Friday study group for Network Plus. And then Tuesday of next week, we have our Security Plus as well to get us through November and get us ready for the North America, I guess the United States Thanksgiving. We already had Thanksgiving in Canada, so we're going to have Thanksgiving in the United States, and that's why we are not doing any other study groups the rest of the month after Tuesday of next week. So we can fit them all in the next week or so. It should be kind of fun. I've got all of these ready to go. We just need you to show up, and we can do some more of those. Thank you so much for joining us on this study group. We love doing these study groups. We love going through the questions. I like writing the questions. It's even more fun to present them to you and see what you think of that content as well. We got a lot more to go through this week. We'd love to see you back on Wednesday. Thanks so much for joining us this time, though. And we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.